Today, I have the pleasure of introducing to you Connie Welsh. I'm so excited to talk to you, Connie, because Connie was an air marshal back in the day when things were really heating up on airlines. Connie has an incredible story to tell you about that I haven't heard yet. So Connie, would you please share a little bit about your time as an air marshal?
Okay, so just a little bit of background. Back in the early 70s, there were a lot of hijackings, airline hijackings. These were mostly political, and the major place people were hijacking to was Cuba. So the government instituted a program called Customs Security Officers, which were known as Sky Marshals. And we rode on airplanes from designated areas to other designated areas to prevent a hijacking. So the majority of hijackings, like I said, were to Cuba. So there were many flights to Florida because that's the easiest way to get to Cuba. But there were also a lot of overseas flights as well. So my career started as I applied under just the general federal government application form at the time called the SF-171. And I got a call one day that said, oh, would you be interested in being a Sky Marshal? The second question was, well, do you know what that is? And I read a lot, so yes, I knew what it was. And I said, yeah, I'd love to be interviewed for it. So I had an interview in Chicago, and they explained more of the position, flying on aircraft, being armed, training, all these things. And one of the questions I always remembered from one of the interviewers, a gentleman said, in this position, you may have to shoot and kill someone. How would you feel about that? And I said, well, if it was going to save the plane, if it was going to be part of the job, I said, I understand that, I get it. I said, I believe I could do it. And I said, and then immediately afterwards, I would throw up. And he said, that's a great answer, because it showed that you could do it, but you also had some feelings.
Yeah, so, you weren't too excited to go out and shoot up a bunch of people.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, so I was hired. I went to training at Fort Belvoir, Virginia, and we did 4 weeks of intensive training. We lived on the base. And well, the men lived on the base, the women lived in the hotel. So once preferential treatment was a good thing, but we all went through the same training. We went through classroom training because you needed to know the law. We went through firearms training, which was even more strict than what the Secret Service goes through. Because the Secret Service, because of think about it, they're out there protecting the president, they're out there in the open, there's a lot of space. As a Sky Marshal, you were on the fuselage of an aircraft. So your range of shooting was quite limited. And the last thing, of course, you wanted to do was punch a hole in the fuselage. So we had very strict firearms training. And then we also had hand-to-hand combat training. Wow. So, and people washed out, and you could wash out from any level, whether it was classroom, hand-to-hand combat, or firearms training. And people did. We lost people, a lot of people along the way. So after that, you were given your assignments and off you went. So the two most interesting things, or things that happened to me as a Sky Marshal, one was flying to Florida out of Minneapolis, just couldn't hold the story about why I was going, where I was going, who I was seeing. So the man questioning me says, oh, you must be one of those air marshals. And I looked at him just choking back saying, oh, are you kidding me? You think a woman could do that job? So wanted to just smack him. The second time I was in Tokyo, and I was seeing friends who happened to live there, and they were taking me back to the airport, and they got lost. Oh. And so we stopped at a police station, and Fred spoke Japanese. So he said, we have this person, they have to get to the airport right away. They're a Sky Marshal. So of course they went to take Fred to to the police car. And he goes, no, 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 it's the tall, blue-eyed blonde, because I had long blonde hair at the time. So anyway, they surprisingly put me in the car, and I speak no Japanese. They speak no English, and they're trying to find out where I'm from. So they say, you know, New York, Washington, and I say, no, Chicago. And they both go, ah, Chicago, Al Capone. This is what they knew about Chicago gangsters.
Wow.
So, so those were two fun kind of incidents that happened. But one actual incident happened in Honolulu. We were on our way to Tokyo. We hadn't left the ground yet. And the stewardess comes up to me with the magazine with the note, because that's how we communicated. And she said, there is a man in such and such a row that says this plane is not going to go to Tokyo. So that was considered a threat for a hijacking. And so we were on a 747. So in a 747, you had 3 sky marshals, 1 in coach, which was me, and 2 in first class, which of course you think, why 2 where that's such a smaller area? However, 747s at the time had the upstairs. So you had 2 there because you wanted to have most of your defense by the cockpit. So one would be downstairs, one would be upstairs. So I had her call my partners. We met at the toilets, and I said, this is the thing, this is going on. Give me a chance to go confront him first, and then you come towards him. So here I am, 23 years old.
Oh my God.
Long blonde hair, blue eyes, you know, kind of cute at the time. So you remember this is 50 years ago. And I walk up to the man and I say, hi, how are you? Just like I'm flirting. And I have my gun. He goes, oh, hi, how are you? Blah, blah, blah. And I have my gun pointed at his back. And I said, hi, I'm a US Marshal. And there's a gun pointed at your back and you're under arrest for threatening to hijack this plane. I said, so don't move. See the 2 men walking towards you? They're going to take you off this plane and arrest you. And that's what we did. So it, you know, fortunately it was not a major incident, but it was enough for the flight crew to feel that their plane was in danger.
Oh my
So
God.
yeah, so he was escorted off the plane, and then we continued on our way to Tokyo.
Did the other passengers know what was going on?
I don't think so. There was very little, because we were very quiet about it. I mean, you know, the guy thought I was just flirting with him. So, you know, it was very quiet.
Wow. So can you, like, if you're flying now today, do you have a feel for who's an air marshal, sky marshal, or you don't really know?
No, I don't really know. And there's so few. I mean, there weren't that many when I was a sky marshal. I think there was less than 2,000 for all the flights all over the United States on any given day. So I'm sure there are less than there are today.
Wow.
One of the other things we did, which we don't do anymore because it's considered politically incorrect, is that we profiled people.
Oh yeah.
And the interesting thing is that every hijacker from 9/11 fit the profile.
Oh wow.
So it was very small. And of course since then the media has published it. So I have no issues with saying what the profile was, because of the flying public, it was primarily men, because men were the primarily people who did hijackings, not women. So it was men between the ages of 18 and 65. Now you're like, oh my God, that's a huge category. However, flying one-way cash. Very little of the public flies one-way cash. Every hijacker flew one-way cash. All 9/11 hijackers flew one-way cash.
Wow.
So if a woman was accompanying them, of course, then they were screened as well. But it was such a small number of people. And that's what we did. So it was, you know, it was a very broad profile, but it fit a very small, it had nothing to do with race, creed, color, ethnicity, nothing. It was gender based.
And how many years did you do this?
I did it for about 3 years, and then there were no hijackings. So the federal government decided, oh, we don't need this program anymore. And we're all saying, no, you do. That's why you haven't had any hijackings, because you have this program. But they said, no, we're doing away with it. So then we had options to go into other areas of the government at the time, whether it was in law enforcement or other areas. So I stayed with the Treasury and became what they call a Customs Patrol Officer, which is now, I guess you would consider it, I guess it's border protection. So that's what they call it now. So it's border protection. But so I was a Customs Patrol Officer. I worked on the northern border. I worked on the southern border, worked in Chicago. So that was my base.
And oh my gosh, so tell us about that really fast. What was that like?
Which one?
The customs job, what was that like?
So at the airport, it's like totally boring because basically you're checking out the people who are coming in, from other countries. So you're checking them, seeing, are they trying to smuggle things? But we also check the airplanes themselves to see if, someone, flight crew, ground crew would be smuggling in items. Checked the harbor because Chicago is a big port city. So checked ships, just every type of transportation you can think of. So we did all those. We also did pre-flight screening. So once we stopped doing a lot of flying, that was when we did the pre-flight screenings, similar to what the TSA does, but it was at a much smaller scale. Okay. We still profile people as well. And working on the southern border. So I worked in where was it? Laredo, Texas. So along the border there, just again, it's a high smuggling area of not just people, but also narcotics. One incident there was amazing. The agents from there had been sitting on what they thought was a stash on the other side of the border, stash of narcotics, but they just couldn't get a good see. So they said, let's see what's over there. So there was a group of us on this side of the border, about 4 of Customs Patrol officers, took a little raft, rowed into Mexico, and took their little boat into Mexico to see if this was a stash of narcotics. And then they came back. Totally illegal, of course, to enter Mexico for no reason other than to see something was going on. But, it was because you don't know what was going on. So that was kind of a adrenaline pumping moment. And the other one was a high-speed chase. Some guy coming across along the border at night, no lights, driving fast. And we were patrolling the border at night and proceeded to chase this guy probably for, 15 minutes, high speed, no lights, we're running no lights. And just he was nothing. He was just an idiot. So he wasn't smuggling anything. He had nothing. He just was running the border, which is a crazy thing to do.
For sure.
Back then, even now. I also trained a lot of other Customs Patrol officers in the law that they needed to know before they actually went to formal training in Washington. Did firearms training because I was really good. I was rated a sharpshooter. I had been on my college pistol team, so I really knew how to shoot a weapon. And so I trained other officers on how to shoot and doing target practice and things like that. I helped to write the training manual for the Chicago patrol officers. So I did a lot of different things.
Just amazing, to see you on the street. Nobody would ever guess what this woman did in her past. That's just insane. I mean, you were probably the most unlikely air marshal looking person on the plane, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Did you like have hats and like dress it up, or I just didn't matter?
No, I just wore like my own regular clothes. We were armed. So I made sure that everything I wore would have a jacket. so that I could carry my firearm on me,
Right.
which was preferable. Some of the other female marshals carried it in their purse, which to me was useless.
Right.
But I even had a custom-made shoulder holster so that I could easily, so it would be well hidden under a woman's light jacket and would perfectly fit underneath your arm. It's totally different than what a man would have to wear. Shoulder holsters, you know, they don't have boobs getting in the way that women do. So, you know, that I had that done. And just, you know, particularly kept that up because that was really going to be, as a Sky Marshal, the most critical thing. If you ever had to shoot anyone in an airplane, that had to be well orchestrated. Yeah.
So did you have adrenaline going through the whole flight, or were you pretty relaxed?
Mostly pretty relaxed, especially on long hauls. You know, you pay attention. Actually, more of the flights going to Florida, you paid more attention because it was more of a prime target. The long haul flights, a lot of people slept. So the tough part there was the lights are out, it's cooler, and you have to stay awake.
Oh my
So
God.
those were the days when you could smoke on the plane. So a lot of cigarettes were burned on the planes.
Wow.
But it kept you awake, you know, and that's when I started drinking coffee because it kept you awake.
Right.
So yeah.
And so how many flights did you do? Like, did you do a couple a week, or how does that work?
Oh God, we flew more than flight attendants or pilots.
Wow. So like every day you're getting on a plane going, good God, you must have had so many air
Pretty
miles.
much every day. Yeah, except when, let's say we did this flight from Minneapolis, San Francisco, Honolulu, Tokyo, and return. So that one you'd fly Minneapolis to San Francisco layover, San Francisco, Hawaii layover, Hawaii, Tokyo layover. And then pretty much on the way back, you'd do Tokyo, Hawaii layover. And then a lot of times the Hawaii, Minneapolis flight was nonstop. So, but we would do that whole flight. The flight attendants, who would be pretty much on the same schedule, they would deadhead back from Tokyo. So they didn't have to, whereas we were working on our way back from Tokyo.
Oh my
So yeah, we put in a lot more hours and flight time than the crews did.
So did you get any air miles for any of this?
No. The federal government got all of those.
Darn. Oh, darn. Well, is there anything else fun you want to share before I say goodbye to you?
Well, let's see. So we also did a lot of temporary duty. So I served in New York City several times. Months on end in Detroit because they were so short of marshals, so they kept shipping us from Chicago. Temporary duty in Minneapolis, 2 months in San Francisco, which was great. And that was kind of the good thing. You got to do some traveling, you got to see different places. It was interesting and it was boring because, it was one of those hurry up and waits, and then you're waiting for something to happen, but hoping that nothing does.
And did you usually sit in the back of the plane so you could see the rest of everybody? Is that how that works?
If you were in a small plane, you had one in the back and one in the front.
I see.
And if you were in the larger planes, like the 747 or a DC-10, you'd have one in the back and two in the front to be closest to the cockpit. You also did a pre-flight briefing when you were flying. You did a pre-flight briefing with the crew, so they knew who you were. And so this is a really good story, and we can kind of end on this. Some of the airlines were real supportive of the program. Some of the airlines weren't, because they felt they were giving up a seat to the government. So, but the Continental, which doesn't exist anymore, was absorbed by United. They were big proponents because they did a lot of flights to Hawaii, and they were just big proponents of the program. And one of my friends flew for them. So they went pre-flight briefing, And the captain said to him, okay, now here's my plan. This is what I'm going to say over the loudspeaker when we know there's a hijacking. You be ready. He said, because I'm going to put this plane in a dive, which is going to roll that hijacker right to the cockpit door. And then I'm going to pull it up and it's going to be rolling back down the aisle, and you shoot him as he goes down the aisle.
Oh my gosh. And that's assuming the guy's not strapped in, right? Or he's getting ready to. That's really something. Oh my gosh. Were you ever on any airplane emergencies or none of that?
No, none. I mean, all the time I flew, you know, thousands of miles, nothing, no turbulence, nothing, no unusual landings. I mean, you know, air travel is really safe.
Yeah.
Really safe. And there are incidents, of course, but when you consider the millions and millions of miles flown worldwide every day, it's really safe.
It's so cool. I just take my hat off to you. Seriously, I would be so terrified. I could never do that job. So congratulations. You've got nerves of steel.
Thank you.
Well, if anybody wants to reach out to Connie and talk to her, is there an email or something you care to provide?
Sure. It's Connie Welsh. That's CONNIEWELSH01 @gmail.com.
Perfect. Well, Connie, this has been just so much fun. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. It's
all right.
Glad to do it, Nana.
Thanks. Take care.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.